morning, world. This is Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. And today, I wanted to just greet you from wherever you are around the world and open up my monologue honoring the 46th President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden. Last night, in a historic address to the country, President Biden formally announced that he would not be running again for re-election. He talked about his love of his nation and that this love of his nation and democracy wanted basically was more important than the office that he holds today, the presidency of the United States of America. He said it was the time to pass the torch on to a new generation, and he acknowledged that Vice President Harris has the experience and the toughness to be our next president. And he basically said now the decision is up to the American people. The one thing I want to say before we open up the show today and devoted to talking about President Biden was I got emotional when I was listening to him because it really reminded me of the power of America. When he said that a kid with a stutter from Delaware could go on to sit behind the Resolute desk and be president, it really made me think about how great America is. But more importantly, it made me think of this man. He devoted over 60 years of his life to the service of our nation, 50 years plus as a United States Senator. He chaired the Foreign Relations Committee. He knew over 50 to 60 leaders all around the world. And then he went on to serve as the Vice President of the United States, where he worked with President Obama to do many great things for our nation. He thought it was over for him. He wanted to focus on his cancer moonshot, which, by the way, he will continue to focus on. But then he came back to run for the presidency because he really believed it was in the best interest of his country. And when he won the presidency, he led us out of the pandemic. He did create jobs through Infrastructure Act, the ARP Act, about 15 million new jobs. He built alliances with nations around the world so we could help Ukraine. And he went on to continue to do great things for our nation. I could go on, but the bottom line is Joe Biden is a patriot. He's the example of what our leaders should do. I think Van Jones put it right on CNN last night. And he said, you had one president, Trump, who didn't want to leave the office and was forced out because he lost an election. And then you have one man who gave it all up. The highest office in the land. The highest office in the world, the presidency of the United States. I end this remark emotional because I think of a man, all of us, who lost a wife and two children. Think of that. His best friend, Beau Biden, his son, the Attorney General. But Joe Biden looked for purpose and light. And he found that light in the service of others. Mr. President, you have made me proud. I can't speak for all Americans, but I think you've made us all proud because you reminded us what our nation is about. I close with the words from the Alexander Hamilton musical, Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Your Story? I think Joe Biden will go down now as one of the greatest presidents in the history of our nation. We will never forget this president. But more importantly, his legacy will live on in every breath of freedom that we take from here on out. God bless President Joe Biden and his family, Joe Biden, the Biden family, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you, Mark, and let's get started. Sorry I went a little bit over my time, but I was giving a roast to the 46th President of the United States. Please join us, Mark. We're ready to go. Oh, sorry. Well, as we continue, I'm waiting for Mark Lee to come in to let everyone else in. I'm sorry for the length of my monologue, but Rick Rosner is here. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Sorry for the emotion, audience, but it hit me really yesterday, and talking about it made me emotional. But I think it was a great day for America, a great day for the world. And we now wish Joe Biden the peace and rest that he deserves. I think it was a great address, a historic address, one that many will never forget. And as I said in my past monologue, that children and grandchildren will look upon this and say that, you serve your country first, and that, I could be president. I think it's a great thing. But I'm going to go open up the panel. Rick, you were first. We're going to go to Jim. We have Dan Worthington here and Sasha Starr. So please, Rick, your thoughts. And Shaquille.
So Biden still has 25 weeks of work as president to do, and 15 of helping the Dems campaign to do. So he gets rest, but not yet.
Yes, he's got and everyone just go around. We're gonna first take some time, and I'm gonna be here for about 30 minutes today, but wanted to just make sure that we all can give our reflections of what we saw, if we did see the speech, and what we believe it means for his legacy and then the United States of America. I'm gonna go ahead and let's go to Sasha, and then we'll go down to Shaquille, Dan, and James. Sasha.
Thank you. I think it feels almost like we are on a funeral, and I don't believe that it's time for that. I think Biden is still going to be a president regardless of what happens next on election until January 20th. And he still has work to do. And he will be quite influential on the election, by the way, too, because obviously he will help campaigning Kamala Harris and so on. So you cannot dismiss that factor as well. So I think this a little bit premature to have the funeral-like procedure here. And also, I'd like to mention that I wish everything what he's done, he would have done maybe a couple of weeks earlier. However, if it's a part of the plan to wait until the Republican convention will be over and vice president will be already announced, and only then to resign. If that's part of the plan, and I've heard already many theories confirming that, then it's a great plan, and everything was executed really well. So sorry, I'm not talking about his greatness and accomplishments or so on, but I think everything was possible in due time.
Yes, Shaquille.
Sorry, can you guys just give me a minute because I'm just dealing with something in the market. So I'm here, but I'm sort of distracted. So I'll come back to you if that's all right.
Dan Worthington.
All right. So I've been on this for 67 years, and so I've been around most of Joe Biden's illustrious political career. He cheated to get through law school. He's in the bottom of his class. He's always been the clown in the Senate. Even Obama said there wasn't a policy issue that Joe Biden ever got right. It's like, I don't know why you're celebrating this guy's legacy. He hasn't really done anything other than harm the country over and over and over again. He's a racist. We know that. I mean,
that's your
repeated racist. I know. Hey, listen. I know that you love him and you're utilizing him and honoring him and all this other crap. He doesn't deserve it.
Yes, he does.
Doesn't deserve it. He has been.
We don't deserve to have you on the show putting a great American down, Dan.
Well, James, you're an atheist. I don't care what you think.
I'm not an atheist. Who says I'm an atheist? That's
your opinion.
And you're wrong, Dan. You're wrong about everybody. You're wrong about John.
Okay, so James, I'm talking. Are you going to talk over me?
Wrong.
Are you going to talk over me?
Down, Dan.
James,
take care of yourself.
Don't talk over me. It's my turn. I've been asked to speak. Biden has done more to harm this country in the last 3 years than any other president in the history of the United States. They try to turn it all around.
And you're a MAGA guy, right? Because you're lying through your teeth.
They end up doubling it down. Now, listen, I'm not a great fan of Trump, but I think they're both both corrupt. Trump,
Trump
in
definitely.
his personal and business life. Biden in his professional life. His family managed to wrangle millions, tens of millions of dollars out of foreign powers for their own benefit. Now, I don't think that he knew that he was coming back to be president when he did that. He certainly took advantage of it. Oh, God, they have the banking records, James. You're such an idiot.
No, they don't. That has been proven over and over again.
You're such a lying asshole. I need you to. You're a liar. You're a liar,
Dan. Let's stop lying.
Okay, James. Why don't you go into your cave and suck up to the other liberal idiots that you have no brain. You have no brain. Now,
I have no brains.
I think Rick can talk to us in an intelligent way. What I'm saying has an element of strong truth to it, and you know it.
Here. I have no brains, and a great American like Biden is a liar and a thief. Yeah, Dan. All you do is insult. You have no facts to back it up. Let's look about how much brains you have. Start telling the truth.
I actually am telling the truth.
No, you're not. You don't have
I am. I believe everything I'm saying, James.
This outrageous opinion about a great American.
He's not a great American. If he would have left as the vice president, then maybe he had a legacy. But the last 3 years has been an utter disaster for this nation.
That's nonsense. The stock market is booming. Remember, all the companies are reporting record profits. You're out of your mind, Dan.
But Shaquille Latimer, what are your thoughts? Shaquille Latimer,
go ahead. You pitch in here.
Yeah.
Gee, thanks, guys. I'm so glad.
Help the market. That's all, Shaquille.
Well, I'm not going to call Dan a liar. I think that Americans are just focusing on different sets of facts, and Joe Biden's not going to be the president after January, and you guys are still fighting. You guys are still divided, and over nothing, over whether he's got a great legacy or not. Look, I'll tell you what. How I feel about it. He had a long career. In fact, your country's about 250 years old. He's been in politics for 50 years, so he's actually been in politics for 20% of your country's history. Anybody who's in politics and in public life for a long period of time is going to have things that can make them look bad. They're going to have achievements that make them look good. That's just reality. I think when Donald Trump keeps going after Hillary Clinton, you're like, dude, you beat her. Leave her alone, okay? If she wants to cry about it, let her do that. Just leave her be. Republicans kind of got what they wanted. Maybe they didn't get it when they wanted it, but they've been saying how terrible a president he is, and he's not running. So let's relax. Was he a successful president or not? I think different people are going to have different views on it. He certainly had a tumultuous life. I have no idea what it would feel like to lose a wife and to lose children. That's a great tragedy. Certainly, if you look back at some of the things that he said before, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, etc., in relation to race, in relation to, gay marriage and, all these other things, abortion, people change over time. I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago. So I think we should be cautious about criticising too hard. I don't think you have to love the man. I don't think you have to be happy with his presidency. You don't have to do that, especially if you strongly disagree with his policies. But I don't think we need to track him either. But I will also say that in that same vein, there's going to come a time when Donald Trump is no longer the president. And I would like to see the same respect shown to him. Let's not call him terrible names and say that he was terrible, because that's exactly the same sort of divisiveness. So, yes, I think that he had an exemplary career. He contributed a lot to the country. Let's respect that. And let's remember that regardless of how he got there, regardless of what he did, he occupied the highest office in the United States. And it's the office of president that requires, in my personal opinion, the utmost of respect from everybody.
We can be realistic about Biden. He's not a genius. We've had one genius at least as president. Teddy Roosevelt was insanely smart, was a really good president. He wrote 50 books. But we've had a bunch of other presidents. Truman, who was a haberdasher, a clothes salesman. You can do a good job, and I think Biden. He was a senator for 36 years. He had some notable screw ups over the 36 years. One was Clarence Thomas, where he didn't take Anita Hill's side as strongly as he could. And there were 3 other witnesses to sexual harassment waiting in the wings. He didn't call them, and Clarence Thomas became a very resentful Supreme Court justice. Over a 50-year career, you can have screw ups. He did some good things. He got an assault. He got an AK-47, AR-15 type weapons ban that was in effect for like 15 years. Mass shootings went down. But okay, and the one thing about him getting millions of bucks in corruption, my primary argument about that is in that 4 years that he was out of office between being VP and president, he and Jill Biden made $8 million via speaking engagements and books. That's what happens when you're president or VP. You make Hillary and Bill Clinton made $100 million in books and speaking, and people like to throw money at past big time politicians. I don't think that a guy as experienced as Biden, who's making $2 million a year legitimately, is going to want to be involved in corrupt efforts to pull. He at that point he's in his late 70s. He can't spend all that money. Hunter had a sweet deal, but people forget that Hunter, he's a crack and sex addict, but he was also qualified for the positions that he had sweet deals on. Bush appointed him chairman of the board of Amtrak. Biden was trained to do the jobs he did. He just happened to be like out of his mind on crack and hookers while some of this was happening. But the dad is making a shit ton of money, doesn't need to be involved in corruption.
And why was he?
I've seen some of the so-called evidence you talk about, and a lot of it is BS.
Yeah, it's banking records.
And it's my turn, and I would like to say that, besides some elitist snobs out there, I wrote Chess for Dummies. I've been chess master. The International Chess Organization has given me that title. So people who are elitists and think John McCain was a fraud, I don't have much patience for them, so I'm sorry I talked out of turn. But the fact is the Republican House would have indicted Joe Biden. They would have done something to if there was anything there. There's no question they would have been out to get him if they could have. There's nothing there. And so if you're saying you're making stuff up, it's just an embarrassment on your part. So, the thing is that not only did he serve all that time in the Senate, but he worked across the aisle. He was one of those guys who could talk to the other side and get things done. And he did it as a president as well. He was able to pass the CHIP Act. He was able to pass the Infrastructure Act. He was able to get that stuff done, even though he had a House against him. So, the fact of the matter is he wasn't the greatest guy, and he did overcome a speech impediment, and he was given to gaffes. There's lots of things that you can say, but those are petty things to argue about. And you can disagree about policy. That's fair. But to call him corrupt or anything like that, that's just out of the line. That's beyond the pale. It's absolutely horrible that anybody would come on the show and say that. Joe Biden was a great American, and we deserve to thank him for his service.
So there are a majority of
Dan, you're a liar and a stupid. Okay,
there are
I can call people names too. So
there are a majority of the members of the House of Representatives.
Hey, don't talk over me. It was my time, Dan.
Well, you stopped, and so
I did. Go ahead.
They would disagree with you and would say that Joe Biden is corrupt. So I'm not stupid. It's been an ongoing.
Me stupid, Dan. You called me stupid.
It's an ongoing investigation. Well, I apologize because you're not stupid.
Right.
Obviously, you're not. You just have a different political view and bent than I do. Yeah, I happen to be very conservative. You happen to be somewhat liberal, right? And so we have different views about this thing. I don't believe Joe Biden deserves the eulogy that Steve gave him. Joe's met him. Steve's met him, and he likes him, and it's hero worship. It's false because He doesn't deserve all that. He is not the best president we have by a long shot. He has been a relative failure with respect to other presidents that we've had. He's been a poor leader.
14th by presidential historians.
He's been
what you're saying is
well. He's not dead yet.
the president historians have done
But
this
I think
research.
the data shows that he may not have been the greatest president, but I think the data shows 15 million new jobs,
14
unemployment's at 3.5%.
out of
In
45.
North Carolina, we've had $61 billion of job announcements in a state where our governor, Roy Cooper, is most likely going to be named as the vice presidential candidate. And 800,000 people in North Carolina now have broadband access. I could go on. I mean, and I'll give Trump credit for bringing manufacturing jobs back, but I think President Biden was completely successful in doing that. And
Absolutely.
yes, inflation is still there and prices are still high, but I don't think you can blame him. And so I think we could go on, but I think the data and record clearly refutes. I think the Democrats haven't been very clear on the message, but I think that America, if you look at the jobs and movement, is doing much better today than it was.
But gentlemen,
There's no question.
Trump. I mean,
No
but
question.
gentlemen, I think it depends
I think
on
the people
where
decide.
you get.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you finished. Sorry, so keep going.
No, I'm done. Yeah, I'm done.
Americans are
I think the
suffering.
American people have to decide.
I think it depends. I think it depends on where you get your information from, what sort of media you consume, because that can often slant your views on things. So everything that you've just said are successes for Biden. A lot of other people have twisted that into being his failures. So, for example, the jobs number. So, yes, the numbers are that 15 million new jobs were created. But the way that the right-wing media is depicting that is that these were all bounce-back jobs from COVID, and really Donald Trump deserves all the credit. So I think the issue that you have is that you've got people who are, that are listening to information. It's slanting how they view the information they're being given. And so it's very hard for the truth to kind of be established because people will look at the same set of data and conclude totally different things. And that is really a symptom of the division that you have in the United States. Now, I'm lucky enough not to be American, so I don't have I've got no skin in this game. I've got no cat in this fight, or whatever the saying is. But I will say that for as long as that division keeps going, the United States is hurting itself. And just little things like, Jim, you're very offended that Dan said some not nice things about Joe Biden. Well, there's a lot of Republicans out there that get very upset when their great leader, Donald Trump, is described as being Hitler or an affront to democracy and all those sorts of things. So, this is what I see is where Americans are just at each other all the time over really nothing. Like, okay, some people really like Joe Biden, some people don't. Whatever. Like, okay, he was the president. Move on. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, but Shaquille, along those same lines, a couple of things I was going to bring up. One, I just saw recently that, and for those of you that are economists and study the economy, which I don't study as much as some of the people on this show that have investment shows and direct investment interest and everything, they did say, I think today that it was released that the U.S. economy grew at a 2.8% rate in the last quarter, and that the definitely it looks like it is doing stronger than was expected and all along those lines. So that could be something that could help the candidacy or not help the candidacy of Kamala Harris and the cement of the legacy or non-legacy of Joe Biden and all in that space. And yeah, I would agree with what folks have said, that there are things that he has gone through in terms of the hardships that he has gone through. And I can only imagine what it would be like to lose a wife and a son. Have not had either of those. And I can only imagine if I had it, what it would be like to lose those and everything along those lines. And definitely he has served as a public servant for a number of years. Some people will say that that is a great thing. Other people will complain about that because there are some people that think that there are politicians on both sides of the aisle that maybe spend too much time in politics. But if you're going to do public service, and it does seem like he's devoted his life to public service, then what do you expect him to do would be my question to that, because it seems like that is where he was geared at. And I even heard them, I think, say, or some people that were commenting on him say that this might have been his dream since being a child, to be in the seat of power and to be kind of like either in Congress or maybe even president. And we do know a lot of people grow up with that aspiration and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. And to your point, Shaquille, and we can get into some other issues as well. That whole insult kind of thing has happened on both sides of the aisle and everything. Because I mean, if you follow Twitter right now, even after that speech that Joe Biden made and some of the speeches around Kamala and everything, there's a lot of conversation about a remark that Vance made some years back, but people are throwing it back in his face. And as one that used to own cats and everything, this whole notion of the cat ladies running the world is being something that we're seeing a lot in social media, because he kind of made an insult to the women of the Democratic side that are leaders that are.
You're judging it based on what was said on Twitter. I mean, people on Twitter are insane. Like this isn't real life. Any idiot can get on a keyboard and just tap away and say whatever the hell they want. Sorry, Rick.
This the whole thing about the angry cat lady, and apparently this is something that Vance said sometime back when he was talking about the fact that neither AOC, Kamala, or Pete Buttigieg have natural kids and all along those lines, even though Pete Buttigieg is part of the LGBTQIA community, and he and his husband do have two adopted kids, I believe it is. And of course, Kamala's got her stepdaughters that apparently have a great deal of affection for her and are definitely fans of her and all along those lines. Wow. I'm not sure about AOC and what AOC's child status is and everything, but that is kind of what was a quote, and it wasn't that long ago. I think it was like maybe about 4 or 5 years ago that it was made by Vance in one of his kind of like going around and drawing.
Yeah, Vance had no idea he was going to become a senator, so he wrote about how he masturbated in his book. If you're going to write an autobiography, and if you jerked off in an interesting way, you want to throw it in there. But most people, and then when he was a senator, he had no idea he'd be VP. So if you're a rabble-rousing senator, you're going to say stuff. So yeah, all this stuff came back to bite him, but everything, is part of the way people are now. We have an opportunity to come together as a nation, like Shaq thinks we should. I think we will fail. Jimmy Carter is in end-of-life hospice. He's 99. He refuses to die, but he likely will die before the election. And he was a very divisive president. Conservatives think he was one of our worst presidents. Liberals don't think that. He was definitely our greatest ex-president. He lived for frickin' ever and did good work. So can we come together as a nation in honoring Jimmy Carter? I don't know.
Yeah. I think so, because my right-wing friends all have that same view. He was the worst president, but he was the best ex-president. That's what my right-wing friends in America say. So I don't think that anyone's going to come out and be horrible to him when he eventually passes, and I hope he doesn't, but obviously if he does one day. I want to come to the economy issue that you brought up, Mark. I'll just say a couple of quick things quickly. One, when the stock market was at record highs under Trump, Democrats said that's not the whole economy. I don't think you can have it both ways. But if you're going to talk about the economy, here's what I'll say. The US had an increase in deficit spending. Was that a good idea or a bad idea? Well, it certainly appeared that it was a bad idea when the US was lagging Europe. But now, maybe it looks like it's a good idea. I don't think we're going to know whether it was overall good or bad for many more years. It's something that economists will study for generations after us. But I'll say this. The total rise in the stock market has increased by more than what inflation has. The increase in GDP in the United States has increased by more than what inflation has. Those are pretty big numbers that would indicate that the overall macroeconomic strength of the United States is good and it's improving. Other countries are going to catch up, which means that on a relative basis, the US would look slightly weaker, but that's not because the economy is not doing well, it just means that other countries are catching up.
Well, speaking of and I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on it.
Hang on. Sorry, Mark, sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's lots of different things that you can assess. But what I'll say is this. When the government spends money, it does have a tendency to end up in the hands of big corporations. Great for somebody like me because I can buy and sell their shares. I think that everybody, regardless of what political side you're on, has to understand that no matter what political decisions made, there are going to be some winners and there's going to be some losers. What we need to do is to stop ignoring the losers so that people who have found themselves worse off, that we do something to help them come along for the ride. I don't think that is a bridge too far. I think it can be done, but it does require reasonable, rational conversations and an acknowledgement that these things are happening.
But along those same lines, you talked about divisiveness, Shaquille. I would love to hear everybody's thoughts about this, because divisiveness can also impact the foreign agenda and the foreign conversation as well, because there are folks, including some American hostage families, that are not pleased with Netanyahu, and they are thinking that that was political theater, what he did in terms of his speech to the Congress yesterday. And there were other people on the Democratic side that sat it out. And I don't think that that was necessarily a good thing to do in front of a foreign leader either, and everything. So I was just wondering our thoughts as to how effective it was, because that was the other thing that happened big yesterday as well, and also whether it will help get the hostages freed out of Israel, those that are alive, even though I understand 5 folks that had lost their lives were rescued by Israeli forces. I believe that was yesterday and everything. So I was just wondering our take on the speech and how the speech was handled by Congress, because like I said, there are American hostage families that are upset, and of course there are people on the left that are upset, and of course there was definitely a strong Republican showing in the speech that he made yesterday and everything. So just wondering everybody's take.
But no, there's no winner in that conflict. There's no good way to approach it in America. You know, Israel is right to take it to Hamas. How they're doing it is tainted by Netanyahu's, you know, he's a smart guy. He's kind of a corrupt guy. You know, Hamas is unequivocally murderous and deserves to be obliterated. The people of Gaza don't deserve to be obliterated, but they're helpless and complicit. So it's a big, to use a racist term from 100 years ago, it's a tar baby. That's from Brer Rabbit.
I know.
And no matter, you know, you get near it at all, you stick to it.
Well, I will defer to Sasha on this, Rick, but I have to say that, you know, what Hamas did was present itself as moderate. It was not going to be a terrorist, and they won an election. This was back in the early 2000s, and there hasn't been an election since. I don't think the Gazan people want Hamas as their leaders, but there's no way to get them out. So this is the problem, and you do have to target Hamas. And I think the absolute the fallout of the civilian deaths has got to be stopped. And I agree completely with Bibi. He's got to go, and his right-wing cohorts have got to go, because what they're doing is, you know, uniting the Arab countries against Israel and suffering in the worldwide perception of the right for Israel to exist, which they obviously have the right to exist. So, Sasha,
I agree. I agree. Go ahead, Sasha. You're
okay, I was listening to speech of Netanyahu all from the very beginning to the very end. So you want to talk about Netanyahu as a politician and what he did wrong and what he did right, and maybe he never done anything right and just everything wrong. Who knows? It all depends on what media you're listening to and so on. I'm going to talk only about his speech yesterday, because that's what I saw with my own eyes, listen to him with my own ears, and I don't need interpretation of CNN or what is his name, Fox News or anybody else. I am my own judge, and I'm listening only to myself in that respect. What I've heard the incredibly savvy and skillful and talented politician, second to none. The way he made his presentation, calling the members of the Israeli army, some of them were maimed and so on. He orchestrated it as if he were Bach or Wagner. I can't even compare him to anybody else. That is such a high level of delivering the message. It's, as I said, second to none. I don't see any politician in any country today who could be on that level Over here, maybe. Over there, possible. On that level, no one. So even regardless you love him or you hate him or so, just admit the skills, the talent, the pizzazz of the presentation is absolutely fabulous. That's about what I heard yesterday. Now, you're talking about that there is no way to get Hamas out of governing Gaza. There is a way, and Netanyahu shows the way. He is already destroyed most of the Hamas. There are some little pockets of resistance here and there. And the problem is that now, even when people talking about Israel is starving Palestinians and so on, he told yesterday how many trucks with food Israel directed toward the Gaza. And the problem is that Hamas is stealing the food, and the food is not getting to Palestinians. But there are so many trucks with food, and Israel is now about the collateral damage. Let's call it that way, as it should be. There is an Institute of Studying the Wars, and they admitted that in the urban warfare, that's what Israel is doing right now, there is no instance in the history of the world that the sacrifices of the population, of civilian population, would be so low as it happened in Gaza. And we know that they're using civilians as a human shield, and so we know all their tactics of Hamas. And yet Israel was able to have very, very low number of civilian deaths. Number two is Netanyahu, as much as local population in Israel, they probably, some of them hate him, some of them love him. The point is that today, 97% of Israelis want complete obliteration of Hamas. Period. 97%. So who is Netanyahu to say, well, I don't care about 97% of population of Israel. I want to do this or that or so on. He is doing exactly what the population of Israel wants. And what he's saying is, once Hamas will be eradicated, then he is prepared to put a government from Arab countries for neighbors of Israel to govern Gaza, as long as it doesn't excuse to teach and indoctrinate the children in a hate of Israel and Israelis. So as long as it will be normal government by Palestinians with help of others who are going to build a real country instead of doing nothing but just attacks against Israel and so on. And by the way, the leader of Gaza, Anwar, he admitted openly that the more Palestinians are being killed, the better for Hamas, because the world opinion will be against Israel, and that's what their goal is. That's why they're using the Palestinians as a human shield. That's why they're doing all these atrocities, because this is exactly what will help Hamas to stay in power. It's not going to.
There's a couple interesting things about Netanyahu. One, he's been in politics forever. He's 74 years old. He's been in politics for 40 years, makes him very skilled. And two, he is the only American foreign leader we have. The guy went to high school in Philadelphia. He speaks English like a native English speaker because he...
Oh, Philadelphia is English.
Yeah, he's freaking American. So he can get in there and he can, so Zelensky comes to America, his English is terrible. He needs an interpreter. Netanyahu, it's like coming home.
Hey, just along.
So let me say a couple of things. Some of the criticism that Netanyahu gets, like you guys were saying, perhaps he should do things differently, or perhaps he's not a great leader. it sort of implies that if you had a different leader, that they would do things differently. What should they do if they're not going to have a ceasefire? What should Israel do? Now, just to come over to the Palestinian side for a minute, I don't take a strong position here. My whole life, I thought that the whole world said they should have a two-state solution. I'd like to see peace, but I don't know what that looks like. I've got no idea. But I've listened to some of the less hostile people that support Palestine, and what they've said to me is, look, we don't want a two-state solution. We don't think it's going to work. What we want is we want to be integrated into Israel. They don't have to leave. We want that land as well. It's ours. Unfortunately, and I've said this before, unfortunately, I don't see this ever being resolved between Israel and Palestine. It has to be resolved between the Middle East and the powerful Western countries. Because, when you've got the Middle East wanting to go one way with Israel-Palestine, and you've got the big Western countries, Australia and the UK and the US and Europe, wanting to go a different way, it's our money and our influence that is creating the problem. So until we can resolve it in a way that's satisfactory to the Middle Eastern countries and ourselves, this conflict will keep going on. So we have to do something. I don't know what that something is. I wish I did know, but I know that we can't just keep going on, because Israel and Palestine have been fighting for as long as I've been alive, and I don't want any future children or grandchildren that I have to also have to live through this kind of horrible tragedy that befalls the people that live in the
I'm sorry, I just got back. Do we have any input on Netanyahu's address? I haven't.
That's part of what we've been talking about this whole time.
Talked about it.
Okay. So, do you think? But I'm sorry, I had to take a call. But was that a good thing, bad thing that he came? What do you? I just real quickly. What did you tell me?
Well, we have some difference of opinion, Steve.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully the couple will get
he's got to come, though. He's got to come and address the United States. And I think that regardless of whether you agree or don't agree with him, I think it's very important that we hear from him so that everybody knows what he is actually
great
saying.
Presentation. No question about it. You did a good job.
No doubt. Dan, you
He
have
is the leader of a nation, right?
I do have a comment. I think the issue here has to do with the Hamas leadership. The ones that are in other Arab countries living it up on the billions of dollars that the international community has been giving the Palestinian over the years. The money hasn't been going to the people. If it had been, every person in the Gaza Strip would be a millionaire right now. And so it's the corruptness of Hamas, it's the corruptness of the leadership, it's the Iranian influence and the money the U.S. gave the Iranians to feed all this. It was a mistake because they foment this kind of behavior all over the Middle East. Look at the Houthis and everybody else. You don't have to go far. They're all funded, and the advanced weapon systems are all funded by the Iranians, provided by the Russians and the Chinese. And so, guys, you've got to cut the head off the snake. The head are these leaders who are living in luxury and should be adjudicated as international war criminals and tarred and feathered and, whatever, executed, whatever, because they are the problem. They are the head of the snake. And, this kind of thing is so rampant throughout the world with this kind of corruption and these kind of power players. And they are the problem. They are the problem against world peace. The terrorist actors are the problem. They're the ones that are causing the foment and preventing peace in the world. In Ukraine and everywhere. It's got to stop. If we're going to have peace, we need to come up with a solution. Money is driving all this. The U.S. has made a tremendous amount of money on this war by providing weapons, at least on paper, right? They're never going to get paid for it, but at least on paper, they're able to count this, and it's driven the economy from the standpoint of the military-industrial complex and that kind of thing. And that is one of the things I think is the reason why we continue to support Ukraine in the war against the Russians, when I think there could have been a peaceful solution 3 months in. If they had reached a settlement of sorts, and it could have been settled. And look at the price. So many have died. So many talent, treasure, history, culture, all destroyed because of the idiocy of these two leaders. Well, actually three, because it included our president as well. I mean, who was
one
in
leader,
agreement.
Putin, who invaded.
Yeah, well, and actually, but Biden also has. It takes more than one to tango, right?
No,
James?
one invasion was by
Right.
a terrorist.
Yes,
despot leader,
exactly.
Putin. Blame
more
the right guy here.
Putin started it. I agree. It could have been ended, though, diplomatically, right?
We hope.
Well,
but we don't
I'm
know
sorry.
that.
I have to jump in on that because I'm not trying to defend Putin. I'm definitely not trying to do that. But I just want to make this point. Nigel Farage, when he addressed the European Parliament many times over a decade that I'm aware of, kept telling Europe, stop poking the Russian bear, stop doing it. This could have been avoided through diplomatic channels. Well before Trump, well before Biden. This could have been avoided, but Europe spent a whole decade with its head up its own ass. That's why this situation has gotten out of control.
What
Okay?
about Chechnya and Georgia? Putin did that to them too. So that whole poking the Russian bear. This was an outright invasion. You can't put any other spin on it.
I'm not. No. I'm not trying to put any kind of spin on it. What I'm trying to say is, this could have been avoided. Like, Dan's made the point that this could be dealt with diplomatically. What I'm saying is, maybe it could have been, like a decade ago. It wasn't. So now we've got the situation that we've got. That's not me defending Putin. I'm not saying that what he did was right. What I'm saying is that this was something that the world powers were being warned about, and nobody did anything. And now he's gone and done what he's done. And the poor people of Ukraine who are suffering because of it, the poor people of the countries that you've talked about that are suffering because of it, it's totally wrong.
Shakil, the Western powers in 1938 in Munich done everything possible and impossible to appease Hitler and avoid Second World War. Did it work? No, it didn't. We know that now.
It wouldn't
now,
work.
Speaking about Russia, Russia is an imperialistic country for 1,000 years. They were fighting wars most of the times during their 1,000 years history. Today, their economy is 100% switched to militaristic way of production, and they cannot exist without war. They don't want to end the war either by agreement of peace agreement or by winning the war or by losing the war. They need war. Russia is a war by itself. Where is Russia? There is a war. So don't try to find a clever way. The Western politicians could have done this or that, and Biden could have done this or that, or so on. No, that's not.
Okay, I'm sorry, Sasha. I didn't say that Biden should have done something differently. I didn't say that.
Countries have been at war for a long time. There is really nothing we can do with the mentality like that. The only thing we can do as our country is control and do what we do, right? But other countries, Israel and all of these countries have been at war for centuries, maybe longer than centuries. And there is just absolutely nothing you can do about what goes on there. We only can control what we do, what we say, and we need to focus on that and try to focus on unity. Try to set the example, not divide, not argue, but set the example of what it takes to become a United States again and unify and stop pointing fingers and stop blaming other people and stop spreading unnecessary fear. And that's what we need to do.
I agree with your last statements, but I don't agree with the fact that America can't do anything in the world order. You know, these are centuries old.
I didn't say that. I said we just don't need to butt into some of it.
Well, I think we do. I think that was the reason we stayed out of World War II until Pearl Harbor. We said, oh, it's a European war. We are isolationists too often, and we can't be with something like Palestine and Israel. We can't be with something like Russia and Ukraine. We can't be outsiders. We have to take a stand, in my opinion. And when we do take this stand, it's because we want to be on the side of democracy and freedom, and we want to stop foreign powers from invading others. And this is something that is an international standard. The UN has been powerless. We have to have a united front. I'm talking about getting the Middle Eastern countries together and the Western countries together. That's the basis for a solution. It's got to be internationally based.
Sorry, but Mark, could I just have a moment, please? I just want to clarify something because of the way that Sasha responded to me. I just want to clarify something because I don't want you guys to have the wrong impression. I probably said things quite clumsily. What I was trying to express, again, is not support of Putin. What Dan said about there being a diplomatic solution, what I was trying to express there was the West knew for quite a long time that there was a potential for Putin to behave the way that he has. There's a lot of things that we should have been doing in anticipation of that. For example, we should have been supporting Ukraine a lot more strongly than we had for a decade before this occurred. We should have been increasing our military operations in that part of the world. There's all sorts of different things that we could have done to try to deter this from happening. So I'm not in any way standing up for Putin. I'm just saying that we in the West should do more. And as Jim just said, the idea that we're not going to get involved,
Steve
we
and Rick
shouldn't get
are
involved.
next. Okay.
I know. I
What
always
have you got,
get.
or
I
Steve.
think
Rick's next.
All right, so
Someone should
here's
ask
my
a question.
theory of why
Steve,
Russia's
Steve,
been.
come back in a
All right,
minute.
so
You're
let me.
better.
Here's my theory of why Russia's been imperialistic for 1,000 years. They are a vast, bad neighborhood. Their land is crappy. It's Siberia. And then they look over at Europe right next door, which is the nicest neighborhoods in the world. All these nice countries, access to the sea, nice climate. And Russia's like, why can't I move into those nice neighborhoods? And so they're constantly pushing to get at the better land that's right next door to them. Is that pretty much what the deal is?
Yeah, Catherine the
Pretty
Great.
much.
That goes back to
But-
Catherine the Great.
It's not only the climate. I remember when they were in Ukraine in the first several weeks of the war, the Russian invaders, what they were doing, they were taking toilet seats and washing machines and toasters, and they were sending them back to their homes in Russia because they don't have that in Russia. Most of
They
the
don't have
people,
toilet seats?
the toilet seats,
Go outside of Moscow. You'd be
toilet
surprised.
itself. Well, in Moscow and St. Petersburg, they have
Sure.
apartments. But if you're going to Siberia,
Putin doesn't care about his citizens,
He
obviously.
doesn't care about his citizens.
Well, I mean,
Please.
there are many countries that don't have these things, and many people who live naturalist in the land, and they don't have toilets or anything like
which
that.
countries are you referring to?
Just people who are more native. But you can
Sorry.
go to places.
What
and
countries in
see-
Europe are you
I mean, heck, I
referring
can go
that
out to
they
the
don't
ranch and
have
keep
toilets at their apartments? What
So-
countries in Europe are you referring to?
So in Europe, probably
Because
not. And I
Ukraine,
think
which is
in the
one of the
past-
poorest countries in Europe, they have all toilets even in the smallest
Actually,
little town.
something I learned about Scotland, who became probably one of my greatest heroes in intelligence. They have a great sewer system, so to speak, and they utilized it to start running fiber networks because they weren't allowed to dig up the streets anymore. So, I mean, there are a lot of things, but you know what? I have seen, where you see documentaries of, people that are native to their land, like that live, and I see people camping and they don't have toilets. So, I mean, but the thing is that the problem isn't whether people have toilets or this or that. The problem is this. Okay. The problem is who wants the most power. And that's what we have right now. We have a lot of people who think that they deserve or entitled to all the power and the only way they get that is to throw their muscles around. I think Putin could have handled it a little bit better. I think
How?
patience.
Which way back?
He could have just sat back.
He could have handled it much better by, I don't know,
he
not
should have
invading
just
Ukraine.
waited. But
I think
Rick
we got
had
it.
something he wanted to say, and I don't.
Yeah.
And then Steve did too, right? Or Rick, you finished?
I got to say my thing.
Okay, Steve's turn. So let's let Steve talk.
Yeah, and then I want to end with just something about the presidential race. But I don't think it asks why. Sometimes I don't know. It's been so long since I've analyzed Ukraine because so much of the focus has been on the domestic campaign. But I often get asked questions why. Why is Putin doing this? I think he's just doing it because he's a dictator and he just wants to control bring back the former Soviet Union. That's just my opinion. I don't think it's about oil. I think it's just about power. And I guess Sasha would agree with me. I mean, this guy is a tyrant, and that's just my opinion. And I hope I'm answering the media organizations correctly when I'm asked, why is this happening? The other thing I would say is, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. I'm not going to be on World Politics tonight, but I think I've heard Trump is reassessing his vice presidential candidate. And so it's not working really well with him right now with J.D. Vance on the ticket. I really think he blew it. He made a big mistake. And I don't think that's ever happened before, that you go to, you go to the vice president and say, the nominee, and say, like, I need you to stand down. But I think he's not doing very well.
Well, I mean, they have J.D. Vance has defeated Trump for years. He has despised. He has said the worst things about Trump for years. So it was quite a shocker,
I just don't think. I just think
it's going to be very interesting, because if they do replace J.D. Vance, one of the right-wing talking points at the moment is that the Democrats have, just installed Kamala Harris, and they didn't let there be primary votes or an open convention. And so, they're the real threat to democracy. If after Vance has been confirmed by the RNC, they then roll that back and put somebody else there, well, they've just done the same thing, and they lose any ability to criticize Democrats, right?
Well, I will tell you what the problem is
really.
right now. Trump realizes he made a big mistake because he didn't put a woman on his ticket. And I think that's what he wants to do. I think it's all about, now there's a woman up against him, and he wants a woman with him to fight her, because he can't fight her. He cannot fight her.
It may be someone a little older than Vance. A little bit more
Crimea. The idea that you wanted a source of water into shipping lanes and stuff like that. They took over Crimea for that reason. But I also want to double down on the point that they're trying to restore the old Soviet Union. That's what Putin was brought up with.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I agree. They're trying to restore
KGB,
the
not
old.
a nice guy. He's a tyrant. He's a dictator. He doesn't care about his citizens, and we cannot sugarcoat this. There's no diplomacy with a guy like
Hitler.
that. He has to be opposed. No appeasement.
But I know a lot of people who like him. I work with a lot of people. I work with them, but I know of a lot of people who speak very highly of him. And I sit and listen, because I always say sometimes you have to learn more about who you're opposing, and the best way to do that is just to sit and be quiet. But I think that it's interesting to me to hear the people who do agree with him. I just find it just very interesting.
As liberals, we need to say that J.D. Vance is the best VP candidate ever. We love him.
I love J.D. Vance. I really do.
Because if he replaces her with Nikki Haley, then we've really
got trouble then. Yeah, Nikki Haley's a
regular. As I've been saying, Rick, what Donald Trump can do. What Donald Trump can do is a point, because now the Republicans are saying that they really love Joe Biden. But what Donald Trump should do is put Joe Biden as his VP, or put Hillary Clinton there.
But J.D. Vance thinks women belong in their place. You know what?
Today on CNN at 5 o'clock. And I'm
very happy with the choice of J.D. Vance, and let's move this thing on. Anyway, everyone have a great day. Don't forget to check out some of the shows today.
Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, Steve, we'll see you tonight. So everyone take care.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Dan.
Bye. Take care.
You got it?